Look at that. Qualify the podcast. I'm too excited today. Check this out. The champ is here. The champ is here. 3-time world champion Reggie Johnson is here. More than 3-time world champion Reggie Johnson is a man I just actually consider a buddy. But today we're talking boxing. This is going to be crazy. We also have Jasmine, Jazzy G, Lazo, Fighter Nation 2 in the building. Say hi.
Hey.
You're all on Cameo with yours. This is a good day. We got a lot of talking to do, a lot of boxing to talk about. Got a boxing event coming up, right? That actually is a meet and greet with Evander Holyfield on the 24th. Super excited to do that. That's going to be at the Way Church. But for the sake of business, let's do some housekeeping rules. Like and subscribe. Be sure to follow us on QLAFD Podcast, Instagram, as well as on YouTube. You can search all of that on Google. You can find us by the trademark logo, Qualify the Podcast. I'm too excited for this. Let's get started. Where do you want to start? Because here's the deal. I'm going to probably end up having this, I'm going to freak out like a fan, and I'm trying not to do that because I got to talk to you like a buddy. But at the same time, I really appreciate you being here. And I really wanted to thank you for taking out the time to actually talk about, the event, cover some boxing history, talk about our similarities. There ain't that many similarities. It's not like I got a champion belt anywhere. But as an avid fan of boxing and also an avid Houstonian, the amount of work that you put in, the amount of fights that you've had around the world, and actually being a testament of hard work, dedicated to the craft, the art of boxing. It's rare that I get a chance to really sit down in a public platform to talk to someone like you in the status that you're in. But I just wanted to go through the history with you. So can we start with how you got into boxing?
Well, I was 12 years old, and my late uncle, we just buried him a couple of months ago, Kenneth Man Walker, who was a great amateur fighter, could have been a great pro fighter as well, but he, kind of got distracted, with life and coming from the hood. He later on in his life turned pro. I think he was about 39 or 40. I think he had like 4 pro fights. But he took me to the Salvation Army Boys Club, introduced me to the late Mr. James Carter, who they put me in there with a young kid who had a lot of experience. And keep in mind, I'm 12 years old. I had been in a lot of fights at school and in the hood, Fifth Ward, but never in a boxing ring with gloves.
Okay.
And they put me in there with a kid. I think he had like almost 40 amateur fights, and we did 3 rounds. And when it was over, I remember Mr. Carter taking the headgear off, taking the gloves off, and the man told me, he said, "Young man, you could become champion of the world, boxing champion of the world." And I felt good doing what I did. Felt good. It was like second nature to me, and I just took that and ran with it. But it came to a point to where, fighting in school, getting in trouble, I had to make a decision because my mother didn't want me fighting. Mr. Carter kept talking to her, and one day Mr. Carter got to her somewhere. I guess he told her that this would stop a lot of that from happening in school and stuff. And, I started boxing. Yeah. And I came to the point I had to make a choice. Do you want to be the class clown, fighting, getting suspended, or do you want to box? Yeah. And I chose boxing.
Well, I think it paid off. I mean, just judging from the history that you have. Let me go ahead and give you the correct accolades just to make sure that everybody understands who we're in a room with. So you are 3-time world champion for middleweight, WBA?
No, I won the middleweight world title once. I won the light heavyweight twice.
Won the light heavyweight twice.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, over the span, that's WBA and IBF.
IBF and IBA my last fight was a world title fight.
Last fight was a world title fight.
In 2008. Mm-hmm.
In 2008.
And I fought the late Julio Gonzalez, who was a guy. See, that's what people don't really know the history of boxing, man. It's so deep. Okay. I remember him when I was living in California, in Long Beach, and training in L.A. I used to spar with him. He had an Asian trainer, and I used to spar with him. I think back then he probably had about 11 pro fights then. But think about it, you fast forward years later, we ended up fighting
You
each
ended
other.
up fighting each other.
And I was supposed to have been fighting Glenn Johnson, who knocked out Roy Jones.
Yeah.
And that fight, we had a press conference here in Houston. The fight was going to be in Lake Charles. And that fight got pushed back. And Glenn got a chance to fight the other world champion. So it left me handed. And we had paid him money. So what I did, I called Julio Gonzalez, coach, and got his number and called him. And I said, Julio, listen, man, we got a fight coming up. We want to put you on the card. He said, who you want me to fight? I say, me. He said, what? I say, man, you're a former world champion too, man. You beat the guy that was undefeated over in Germany. Yeah. And so I put that fight together. I called and put the fight together, and we fought. I won a split decision. It was a tough fight, and he was a tough fighter, the late Julio Gonzalez.
Yeah, so that's 2008. You went all 12 rounds and won that split decision.
Right.
Wasn't even controversial. But when you look back on the history, just some of the notable fighters, just so that those listening and looking can understand this. You're talking about a man who fought Roy Jones. If you're just looking at notable people, he's notable. But he fought Roy Jones. He fought James Lights Out Tony and Antonio Tarver. Different time spans. What I think is really interesting, though, when I start looking at the history of it, you're in this platform where all of these individuals at the top of their game, you, them, y'all all fought each other at one time. I mean, you just kind of took your own separate pathways, but you all fought each other. And I guess my question really is, in the business of boxing, which is, something, but in the business of boxing, is it always kind of predetermined that y'all were eventually going to meet, or was it kind of planned that you would meet at the time frames that you did?
Well, I think that's the problem we having with boxing today. Back then, I think the 90s was the last great era of boxing where the best fought the best. Yeah. Let's talk about Sugar Ray Leonard fighting Jake LaMotta. Them guys fought 6 times. Yeah. Muhammad Ali fought Frazier, 3 times?
3 times.
You don't see that in this day and time where the best fighting the best. This is something I want boxing fans and the people to really understand. You see those fighters going back and forth, pushing each other, talking foul language to each other, trying to produce the fight, but they don't predict who they fight. And that's the problem with boxing. Boxers should promote, be in a position to promote and fight who they want to fight, and they should want to fight the best. Yeah. Boxing is the only sport where the rats dictate the lines, and to be honest with you, that's my passion was boxing. I love boxing, and I'll forever stand for fighters. I don't care if a fighter 0-50 been knocked out 50 times. No one will mess over that fighter on my watch.
Yeah, I respect that. We talked about that off mic. Just to understand your stance and your position about it and the things that effectively you want to do for fighters. And I've always thought that was super honorable. I think it's probably the best word to say, because there's not enough people actually working in that direction.
Right.
You go in one direction and you get hit with the opportunity to make a whole lot of money, and now you're kind of stuck in the same position that any other promoter would be, which is we can capitalize, but we're not able to really benefit the fighters.
Right.
I don't think any promotion is pro-fighter. I think it's pro-entertainment, but I don't think that it's, in the benefit of a fighter to actually get the amount of money they deserve and the amount of benefits they should receive in the future, just so they can have quality of life towards the end. Because it's the hurt business, like we used to talk about, like, I don't know how many years ago. It's the hurt business. And you should be set up well for it once you decide to exit actively that business.
Oh, absolutely. Think about the NFL, the NBA, National Baseball League. Those guys, I think they say they changed it, but I think it was, if you're in that league for 5 years, you get a check for the rest of your life. See, boxers need to come together, and we need to put some business structure in place to create something like that. Because think about how many fighters, man. Think about it. And boxing is really the only world sport. I guess you can add MMA now because fighters fight guys from all over the world. Yeah. But how many NFL teams are from different countries? Think about that. Baseball leagues. Yeah. So boxing and MMA is a real world sport. Yeah. The best fought the best. Yeah. And to bring you up to the date on this year, I think it was like 92 to 95% fighters all over the world come from the hood, come from the gutter. Starts with nothing.
I did not know that. And that's crazy. Now, man, that just makes crazy. You just made me think about it. So when we was outside, he was like, yeah, man, there's a lot of good fighters come from D.C. When people think about Washington, D.C., nowadays they think about the nation's capital, but we know D.C. to be different.
Oh, absolutely.
D.C. ain't the D.C. that everyone's talking about.
Right.
Philadelphia isn't Philadelphia with the bell where you can go tour and see all this. These Detroit, Chicago, Houston, you're from Fifth Ward. Like, you're out of Fifth Ward. And I'm talking about pre-gentrified Fifth Ward, just for people to understand that. When you look at Fifth Ward right now, those $300,000, $400,000 houses, they weren't there. They weren't there back then. So it's a different understanding of a need in order to try to prove yourself and to work your way out of that with your hands, in this case. Right. My father used to say the same thing. He said, I fought my way out of Germany with my fists. He literally said that.
Right.
I said, wow, that's crazy. Because I couldn't equate. I got to Germany, whole different era. Then I understood. Then I understood. I said, okay, yeah, this really isn't the place for him. You know, ideally, maybe not even for me. But you fought around the world as well. Where you went? Thailand, South Africa. Where all did you go?
Well, at the age of 16, let me tell you this story.
Okay.
I grew up fast. My mother had me when she was 14. Later, she had twin daughters, my sister Angela and Andrea. I remember my dad was from Fifth Ward, part of the hood, got locked up for 8 years, the first time he got locked up. And my mother, we used to clown and say I was the man of the house. And I had to become the man of the house at a young age. I had a job, 2 sisters, had boxing. My first job at Kroger's was my job. And I remember we had, I just finna say his name. The head manager, he just called me the other day. But then we had the assistant manager, who was a Caucasian brother, and he smoked a cigar, and he was the way he handled people working there. Yeah. And I remember one day I was getting ready, I had clocked out, and I was looking at the schedule to see when I come back in, and he asked me to do something. Keep in mind, this is a build-up now. This is just something that didn't happen in one day. This was a build-up with him. And the guy asked me to do something. I said, well, I already clocked out. He started using cuss words. Do it. I said, excuse me? Next thing I know, I done hit this man with an 8-piece. He's laying out, blood everywhere. Yeah. I take off running all the way home. My walk home was about like a mile and a half, mile and a quarter, something. But my mother opened the door, and she saw that look on my face. She said, what's wrong? I told her. She said, oh, my God. Because the manager worked with Mr. Carter and worked with my mother to make sure I had days off to support me in boxing. Yeah. I was a standout amateur boxer the first year I started. But anyway, to make a long story short, we ended up having a meeting, got it together. Mr. Callahan, that's his name. All right. This guy worked for Kroger's for, big shout out to him, 54 years. And this man still contact and call me and talk to me and invite me for holidays and all that stuff to his house. I got nothing but love for Mr. Callahan. Respect. He helped a lot of young men. And I was too young really to be even working there, but he gave me the job. But anyway, we had a meeting up in his office, and Mr. Callahan said, Reggie, you're going to be champion one day. You can't be just punching for free, or you can't be just hitting people, this and that. Yeah. And then he turned to the guy and told the guy, he said, like, if he was clocked out, you got all these other guys working, why come you? He said, guys, can we put this behind us? So we put it behind. We looking at each other, but I left, went back to work. And it wasn't 10 days or 2 weeks. This guy, I'm watching him still doing the same thing with the workers. And I went looking for Mr. Callahan and found him in the fruit section. And I said, Mr. Callahan, can I talk to you? He said, what's wrong? What's wrong? He thought something else had happened. I said, no, everything's good. I just need to talk to you. But I went upstairs in his office. I said, Mr. Callahan, thank you for letting me come back to work, but I can't work with this guy. I say, history is getting ready to repeat itself real quick. And I just remember it was a long walk home, because, I was helping my mother. And I remember I knocked on the door. My mother opened the door. She saw the look on my face. She said, boy, what the goddamn hell you done did now? And I said, I ain't do nothing, Mama. I said, I can't work with that guy. I said, I'm going to get myself back in trouble. And my late mother said, oh, my God, boy, I thought you didn't lost your mind again and fighting for somebody. She said, I got something for you. And my mother went in there. She came out with all the mail, and she going through the mail, and she give me the mail that had my name on it, and the mail was open. I said, Mama, why did you? She said, I'm your goddamn mama, boy. I can open your mail. you know how them hood mamas are. But anyway, my mother gave me the envelope reading the letter, and then it said, USA boxing team, Sweden, Germany, Denmark, Japan. You invited.
16.
I mean, 16 years old. I mean, just think about the timing of that.
Man, you give me tears, man.
Just think about the timing of that, and so everything went on. I went to Colorado Springs. We stayed up there training for like about a month and a half. I won all my international fights representing the USA, and I lost in the Olympic trials to a guy who lives in Houston now, Frank Tate from Detroit.
See,
and he won the gold medal in '84.
That fighter circle is something else.
They wanted me to wait another 4 years for the '88 Olympics and just keep fighting amateur, but I wanted to turn pro, talk to Mr. Carter, talk to my mother, and, it was they wanted me to stay amateur, but I wanted to turn pro, and then I found out I had a kid on the way. That closed the deal.
Well, you gotta give me money now. You gotta get some money now.
Yeah, my late mother, yeah, boy, yeah, you turning pro now. Yeah, you already pro.
Yeah.
Yeah, you done made a baby. You already pro, but man,
wow.
So I was able to, take care of that, put my mother and them in a safe place, and just travel the world on the U.S. team.
So at 16, all right, so let's do this. Let's pause for a second. We're going to start back from 16.
Okay.
Really need to give a special shout out because this connection was probably destined to happen, but it wouldn't happen this way. I got to give thanks to Miss Jasmine.
Okay.
Because initially, when of course she did the show and she came to me afterwards and we started talking about it.
That was a great show. I seen it. Yeah,
thanks.
Great show.
Look, I'm only a person that just talks a lot. She actually made it a great show. but I
sure did.
I went to talk with her afterwards, and I said, she says, hey, we need to do something else. And I said, well, there's a couple of things that we can do. And this was before we knew that there was a show going on the 24th. And so we talked about it. One of the options here was to actually get you into the studio. And I said, no, I was waiting for this opportunity because, we would see each other at the gym and it almost be in passing. You actually, I think you was probably training for something. I think you were training for a fight after 2008. Because I was back home in like 2010.
I was still pushing to come back and try to.
Yeah, that's what you said. You said, I got a comeback fight. And I was like, I didn't know you ever left because I remember the 2008. So I just thought you were chilling.
Right.
So, but that was the comeback fight. Not sure if that happened. Did it happen?
No, that fight never happened. But you see that word you used? I thought you was chilling. Boxing, the way the layout of boxing is, it'll put a fighter in a position that he's not chilling, chilling in a way that he want to chill.
Yeah.
He's chilling because the business makes him chill.
Business makes him chill. The business puts him on the shelf.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Man, it's crazy. I was really happy to have met you then. Because I think having the aura of a champion in the gym. I mean, look, there's a lot of other champions, right? I'm talking about a personable one. Because, that's a dog camp. You get in there, everyone's always kind of got the chips on the shoulders. And you should, because, fighters need to have egos. Egos need to take you to places where your mind really don't take you. But I was glad to have a person that was approachable, that I can feel like I can talk to and greet and say, like, hey, man, how you doing, And that's what I felt with you.
I think Termite Watkins made that happen. It was at his.
It was over at East Side Fighter Nation.
Okay, and Termite played a big role in my boxing career in my life too, because he was one of the guys I was told to go downtown at the gym and watch him and his brother.
Yeah.
But I fell in love with Termite. His brother would take 5 punches to get one in, and Termite was a smart fighter, so I stuck with Termite.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Take less abuse over the course period of time. No, it really was.
And that's why I still got all my real teeth in my mouth.
Well, you might have actually more than me. I had the back of mine knocked out, but that was the connection. I wanted to make sure that we had that as a history because even then, she was significantly younger, but we're just looking at this camp. It's just so crazy for me, and I have to thank you for this being the connection that we make almost 10 years later. So that's what I needed to acknowledge. I wanted to say that publicly. I wanted to give
So
you a
was
thank
that
you.
around the time that I was like training, working with her and her brother? They was like 12 and 14.
You might have had, but I was doing MMA, so I was in a
I
whole
remember
different
y'all.
section.
Yeah, I remember y'all was in there. What's the guy who
Anthony Bernabeo,
Yeah,
Combat
okay.
Nation. There you go.
Yeah,
Big brother,
he's
shout
still
out.
there, right?
He is.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's still there
there.
doing jiu-jitsu, kickboxing. The reason how he and I connected is when I came back home, I was doing Muay Thai. So I came from Thailand. Then I was living in Hong Kong. Did a little small 2-week or so in Thailand, just camp.
So what was your reason for being in Thailand?
That was corporate work, actually.
Okay. Wow.
So corporate work took me to Hong Kong. I lived out there. My friends in Hong Kong says, "Hey, you want to take a holiday?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure. Where you want to go?" And it's like, we're either going to Australia or Thailand. But either way it goes, we're going to go train.
Right.
So
Okay.
I said, I'm not really, at the time, wasn't very interested in going to Australia. They said, Thailand it is. So we went down to Phuket, Thailand. So I belong to Sinbi Muay Thai Academy in Thailand, which is right down the street from 13 Coins as well as Tiger. But I'm Sinbi. In Hong Kong, I belong to Impact MMA, which was run by Alan Nagali.
Okay.
He's a Cameroonian brother. He is the kickboxing heavyweight world champion. Fought for Hong Kong. They gave him permanent residency, citizenship, essentially. And he's still there now, even though Hong Kong is changing. But he was still there. I was in Hong Kong from 2010, 2011, and 2015.
Wow.
So it was a blessing, because I think that's why I really wanted to talk to you like this, because I went to Colorado Springs too, but I was trying to do national team taekwondo. Because they have the Olympic training facility in Colorado Springs.
So was that on the Olympic Training Center as well?
It was.
Okay.
Yeah, on the platforms. Now on the platforms, on the mats.
Okay, yeah.
Same gigantic. I can't remember the name of that. The name of the facility. Like the wing that it was at. I can't remember the name, but it was right
they
there.
had the track where we ran on that and all that. Yeah, okay.
Right on the inside. Yeah, because it's too cold to be running outside.
I got so many stories to tell about the Colorado, man. B. Holyfield, Tyson, Reggie Hill, Magic Taylor, the late Pernell Whitaker, Frank Tate. I mean,
Rest in peace,
the
Pernell.
list go, man. It's the guy I was telling you that was from Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Yeah, he fought 65. I fought 56.
Yeah.
And he and I went to Bangkok. And I think I was the youngest to win the World Kings Cup tournament at 16.
The Kings Cup.
Yeah, and And
Alon's brother, James Kwame. Shout out to James. Shout out to Alon and James, man. I don't talk to y'all enough. I love y'all brothers. They took care of me in Hong Kong. Nobody had to do that. Those brothers took care of me. They really did. Alon was like Godzilla, but like James came in and it was like, who is this guy? Because Alon's just super jacked. And James is very, very big, but Alon's much bigger. But James is a Kyokushin. That's karate. That's full contact karate with no face punching, but you get to break ribs. Essentially, what that is, which is fun. But he was a world champion there.
you said it's fun.
It's fun when somebody else get their ribs broke.
Oh,
Not mine.
that's what I was just going to say.
Yeah, not mine. I'd prefer not to.
Yeah.
But it's a weird fighting system if you're not used to it. But James fought for King's Cup too. He fought in the King's Cup tournament for Muay Thai.
Okay.
Yeah. And,
so they had one for boxing and Muay Thai. Okay. Yeah.
Because that, as you know, because I think you fought a Korean brother. What year was that?
As a matter of fact, when I fought in Bangkok, I think the first guy I fought was from Bangkok.
Okay, you fought a Thai.
In Thailand. But yeah, I think the Korean guy, he was the semifinals.
Semifinals.
Because the dude I fought in the finals, I think he's from Africa.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, they split that cup tournament because Western boxing. I hate saying this because I'm Muay Thai trained, but Western boxing always ends up being the solution for a kick fighter. You know what I'm saying? Because the hook. Usually the left hook is it.
Yeah.
The way you exit, it's usually going to catch him on the left hook because the foot position is so different. You never did a mix-up, though. You never fought a kickboxer in your boxing career? No. I'm just asking.
He don't know.
Hey, but you know Tim Musil, right?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Tim, I had the same guy Holyfield had. Tim, his name was Tim too, doing the strength. That's the first time I ever did weights. That's the guy who put all the muscle on Holyfield. I worked with him, and then Tim Musil picked me up later, and I started working with him with the strength stuff. So I used to work with Tim, and I never forget. That's when that MMA stuff started downtown Houston. They used to have it at some of them hotels.
Yeah.
And I remember
the wholesale tournaments, tournaments. Oh my God!
He invited me, and I went to. I remember the third one I went to, and we standing there watching a fight with Joe. He said, "Reggie, you really like this?" I said, "Oh yeah, I love it, man." He said, Reggie, would you consider it? I said, man, hell no, I'm not even doing it.
Hey, James Toney tried MMA one time.
He got tapped out.
Once.
Yeah,
He tried it once.
Yeah.
And respectfully, I just didn't think that was a good idea. Now, he made some money.
Oh, yeah.
And I think, honestly, and I'm not saying it was fixed. I'm saying that Randy Couture is who he fought.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying that Randy probably understood that this is going to go super duper bad if he gets him on the ground, because James don't know how to fight off the ground.
Absolutely.
And so he tapped him.
And guess what? And if they did the boxing thing, he would be tapping out.
It would have gone really bad because James can bang.
He wouldn't have tapped out. He would have got knocked out.
Yeah.
Lights out.
Lights out. There you go.
No, and that's the joy of the matchup. It's just that James took the money to go into an area that he wasn't used to. That's all. And I think that beneficially they respectfully tapped him out.
Right.
Because it could have gone really sideways.
He could have. Sorry about that.
Okay,
he could have broke something probably.
You could have broke a lot. Yeah.
Man, I thought
But that's the joy of the sport when you start talking about it being a global participation thing. I would have never imagined that anything that I did back in my childhood would have took me overseas where I could have applied it again. Mm-hmm. I would have never thought that was going to happen. So then when you and I were talking about the travels that you made, going to South Africa, going to Thailand, I said, well, you were in Thailand. I was in Thailand for a whole different reason, but that was what got me there. But kind of the same reason though.
That was a 16. That was a great, scary experience for me. Mm-hmm. And when I say great, it's just being over there fighting on the U.S. team was great. But I remember they took us, I guess, to the leader's place, and I remember the van drove up, and we see all these guys with the helmet and they had these machine guns and they had dogs. Mm-hmm. And we supposed to be going in there to meet the guy, and a lot of us didn't want to get off. A lot of us, hey man, no, I ain't getting off because it was it was scary, man.
Yeah, the king of Thailand, he passed away 5 years ago, I think, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Wow. But and I don't see, my job makes me have to understand all this geopolitical stuff, which is what we talked about on the phone when we were the first time, right? But it just requires me to know all of that. But when I was almost going to work in Thailand, and I said, this is just too dangerous. Like, this is going to end up becoming a military controlled location at some point, because it just didn't feel right politically. Now, I'm probably going to end up saying this and they won't welcome me back. I don't mean it in a disrespectful way, but I wasn't wrong, because before the king died, he got sick. The general took over, and they turned it into a militarized zone. Not militarized like the U.S. incursion, but they literally came in and started rolling tanks through, kicking all the press out, and they turned into a military coup stabilized nation. And that happened until they gave up Thailand to the general, the military general. He had nothing to do with the king. He wasn't the king's son. King's son was off handling business elsewhere, where he took over the country. I wasn't wrong. It happened. It made it seem like I was crazy, but we ended up living in Hong Kong instead.
Something else I remember about Bangkok, those little motorcycles.
Mopeds.
That's what they call them, mopeds.
Yeah.
It seemed like everybody had them mopeds.
You didn't have one when you were out there?
No, man. I was over there to fight. I wasn't going to be riding around.
Risking your life?
Yeah. Oh, no.
You haven't lived till you ride a moped around that little turnstile in Thailand, man.
Oh, man.
You think you'll die 3 times before you get out there?
Oh, man, that was crazy. And then another thing, too, when we was over there, the gym that we was working at, like the Muay Thai, the karate, and, man, we was looking at them guys when they hitting the hand pads and what's the big thing y'all hold? They kick.
Yeah,
it sounded like somebody was shooting them
gunshots.
Wow.
Yeah, the kick pads are fun. I'm very thankful for all of my instructors and grandmasters have taught me how to deliver kicks. I think I did okay. I just exited out when I feel like it was the right time. But that was a very, very fun experience. And
you know Willie D.
Yeah.
Boy, him and Scarface got that podcast doing real well.
Yeah, Ghetto Boys Reloaded.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. So I was at the fight that I learned you sponsored. It's not sponsored, promoted. That had Willie D on the card.
Okay, yeah.
That was 99.
University of Houston.
At University of Houston.
Yeah, that was my fight after Roy. You want to tell that on the air? You want to talk about that on the air?
You talk about the fight with Roy?
No, the fight with Roy, but I'm talking about what we're talking about now.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay,
yeah.
we're talking about that on the air then, but yeah. That whole deal was Willie D's idea. I was at his house. We was walking on the golf course, and he said, "Reg, man, you need to, man, these promoters." He said, "Man, you need to promote your own fight." I said, "Yeah, man, I said, I'm thinking the same thing." And then he said, and then I be on the undercard. I started laughing.
Yeah.
And I said, "Man," he said, "No, I'm serious, man." I said, "Will." And when I found out he's serious, and I started thinking, I said, "Boy, that's because they don't know Willie D's boxing background."
Yeah.
Willie D and I was on the same amateur team. He started rapping, I started boxing. You know who Willie D uncle fought? Vito Amafermo. He fought Wilfred Benitez, one of the best defensive fighters of all time.
Yeah.
And like myself, he fought in South Africa. I think he fought over there 2 or 3 times. I fought once in South Africa.
Yeah.
But and Willie D uncle Melvin and Willie D late mother were twins.
Okay.
And but Melvin he was a good fighter, man.
Yeah. So the whole thing for me, and actually it was really, really weird because I didn't think I was going that night. So, the fight was happening, right? My cousin Eric is coming in. He's a writer, right? So he was effectively an editor for the Source magazine, which is a.
So you was at that fight?
Yeah, I was there.
Oh man, there was a lot of people at that fight.
It was 100% a lot of people there. Which, by the way, I think I know I saw you. But see, that was like the crazy thing about it. That's how small the world really is, like this boxing world. Because here I am, Eric comes in, he goes to see my dad, and because everyone in the family checks in, right? They check in with him. He says, "Hey, what's Hassan doing? You want to go out tonight?" My dad. Now listen, when people come in and they're of age, they always want to take my dad out. It was always the case. "Come on out with us, Uncle Rudy. Let's go do something." You know what I mean? So he's getting later, and he's like, "I don't want to do that. Take him. He's of age. He's legal. Take my son, right? So take your cousin out, go do something." He's like, "Little cuz, what you want to do?" I said, "I don't care," because I'm rolling around with him. You got to show me what to do. You know what I mean? Just, you're always going to do that. So he get dressed. Got dressed. We went out. Came over to University of Houston, and he was sitting. We had to be three or four rows away from the ring, because he's documenting this because Willie D is making his pro debut. That's the reason why he actually was covering it, because
3 or 4 seats away. That's some good seats.
Yeah, rows, 3 or 4 rows away.
Yeah, rows. That's some good seats. Yeah,
well, he had press coverage.
Okay.
Because the Source magazine was the largest magazine for hip hop. I'm there looking at Mayweather in this gray mink coat. And I'm like, I don't even understand why. Like, how could he wear this in Houston? It's so hot. But James brought him out. See, this is all in the beginning.
Yeah, he sure was there. You're right.
Then Willie fought. And Willie took that guy down, knocked him out in the first round.
Yeah, that's right.
But you clarified. You said he was Hispanic. I didn't know who he was.
Yeah, he's from Mexico.
He's from Mexico.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I just remembered, I just saw a whole lot of wild hair.
Okay.
And then the wild hair hit the ground. So Willie stopped him, and then of course Reggie was the main event. But the night. I'm just talking about how crazy it was. That was the first boxing match that I was ever at.
Oh, okay.
So that's why I wanted to share it with you. That's why it was so important to me. Just to be under those big lights. Now since then, I was been to so many of them, right?
Yeah.
But because that's when I was telling you about the boxing match when you started bringing Willie D when we were talking on the phone. I said, no, I was at that. In boxing for you, Team USA. What year were you on Team USA?
83, 84.
83, 84. Those fighters, and we lost Pernell Sweet Pea Whitaker. Those fighters, the impact that all of y'all made in boxing, in all of these championship fights, all of these titles, all of these boxing divisions. Why do you think, your opinion, and I don't know if this is going to cause trouble or not, but why do you think the Olympics doesn't have more money involved in paying athletes as opposed to you just fighting for the gold?
I'm glad you brought that up because I was just having a conversation with somebody. Like I told you that story about what happened at Kroger's, and I got that letter from the U.S. boxing team. I think back then in 83, 84, I think we was getting almost $400 every 2 weeks. That was a lot of money back then. So I was able to send half of that money home to my mother. And I never really thought about what you just said because I was one of the guys that said, man, them college players generating all that money, TV money, sponsorship money. Those guys should get an X amount of dollars put away somewhere that they can't touch until they go pro or something. Something need to be worked out. And now, I never really thought about that from a boxing perspective, and I'm gonna put some real thought into that. And I think you're right, man, because it's too much. It's just like I tell people all the time, man. You go to a professional fight, a lot of times, the commentator, the ring announcers, the judges, a lot of time they making more than the two guys who got their health and life on the line.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Hey, pop quiz. How much does it cost for you to get your nose reset after it's broken with no insurance?
I never had that problem. So
He's too good, bro. He's too good. He said he don't even know.
I don't know, but I know it's gonna cost some money.
Might be more than what you made on the fight.
But see, this is another thing. Promoters, if they're promoting a fight, everybody that's fighting on that card, you taken care of, you covered. If it happens then.
Promotion insurance,
Yeah, but what about, like, if you spawn or getting ready for a fight and get hurt?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have your own personal insurance and stuff like that, hospital stuff,
you're covered during the event.
Right, only.
You're booked for the event 6, 8, 12, maybe 2 months out. You know?
Yeah.
I got a business brain. You know, like when I think about numbers and I think about benefit of fighters and I think about coverage of that, if I knew that I was booked and I signed my name on the dotted line, I would expect that in preparation for this thing, we should have some level of coverage. But now, up until this point, it's only, no, you're on your own until you show up.
Only to the fight. Because you know what they do? If you get injured, spawn, or hurt, they just go get another fighter.
Right.
And so to fill in for you.
It's the business.
Yeah.
It's the business.
Yeah.
What was it like? What was that feeling of your first amateur fight? What was that like? Were you nervous? Were you scared? How was it?
It was pretty much like when the first time my uncle, Mr. Carter, put me put them gloves on me, put the headgear on me. It was like second nature. I just felt good about it, especially when the bell rung and it was over. I'm like, man, this is, I tell everybody, I say the day I put them gloves on, that's the day my career started.
How many amateur fights?
I was 96-12. I'm sorry, 98-12.
98-12.
Yeah, I had 108 amateur fights.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 96-12.
I used to say, this is a friend of mine. He's was it WBC Asia lightweight champion. Yeah, if I'm mistaken, correct me. I'm sorry, Juke. So Ekapol Juke. He Ricky Hatton. I'm gonna get you back to your question. So I'm gonna bring you back around.
They got another Ricky Hatton. A boxer?
No. Ricky Hatton retired from boxing and went over to Asia and started that WBC Asia division. You don't remember that?
The one from London?
Yeah, the one from London.
Yeah, he's a good fighter. He fought Floyd.
He fought Floyd.
Yeah, okay, yeah. We're talking about.
And he fought Pacquiao too.
Pacquiao,
yeah. So he started that division over there essentially to cultivate the fighters because they weren't getting enough press. So my buddy, good friend of mine, Muay Thai coach at that too, had, his name is Golden Left Hook. I don't know how to say it in Thai, but he's southpaw, Muay Thai fighter, 500 fights. And I'm saying this to a point that I think somewhere around 50 times you really fight somebody, God knows how many rounds that is sparring, you tend to know how a body works. Mm-hmm. You can't touch him unless he wanted you to. You know what I mean? Like, you just see everything, the fidgets, the twitches, your chest would flex this way, your hips would move a certain way. He just knew what was coming. Mm-hmm. And he would always just not be there. And I always thought that was great. It was back to my point, saying that Western boxing was the solution to kickboxing, fighters, because he would always come in, he would lead with that leaping left hook, and down they go. Right. But he won the title. He won the title, the WBC title, in boxing, because he was a boxer too. Right. But that was over, I think they made a fought in Singapore, but yeah, he's from Thailand though. Wow. Yeah, fun stuff. But 100 plus amateur fights. How many pro fights?
52.
52.
And like, if I would have been active, like when I was started active, I probably would, like Chavez and a lot of them, I would have over 100 some pro fights. But when you learn the business and come to the point, hey, wait a minute, man, this is not right. Enough is enough. So I've had to go to court with Don King and other promoters. I had to set out some contracts. Just wait till the contract was over and then, carry on with my career. So, if I would have been busy, like, let me tell you this: if I wouldn't have left when I came back from South Africa, in 1988, and I also add this on because everybody know about this. From America to London, UK, I was on Pan Am Flight 103, the same plane that crashed about a month and a half ago later. I just always tell people, but just knowing that I was on that plane is just...
That's a blessing because it could have been the other way around. I get what you're saying.
But if I wouldn't have, when I came back, wasn't getting no fights, Bob Jordan, who was my manager, I just left his house. That's where they picked me up from his house.
Okay.
He's like 80-something. His wife is in her late 70s, and I help him out a lot. But you know, I had to leave him, and because they wouldn't getting me any fights, and the opportunity presented itself, and I jumped on it and ended up moving to California, and that's when my career took off. And I always tell people, you got to chase the dream because the dream ain't gonna wait or chase you.
Mm-hmm.
So, if I wouldn't have went to California, I probably wouldn't have never got a chance to live out my dream of fighting for a world title. I know that first 2 years I was in California, I was the busiest fighter in the world. I think it was 12 or 13 times, and it was less than 2 years.
Wow.
And, you know, way back in the day, they used to fight a lot like that. But, you know, around our era, like the 80s and 90s, these guys now, they fight once a year or twice a year because they're getting that big money.
Big money, yeah. Bigger money.
Yeah.
It's like the best advice that you can give to an amateur for now, like nowadays. Like, what's something that you can tell them?
Well, I would say you have a heart-to-heart talk with yourself and say, if you really, because most people say, I love boxing, I love doing this. You know, you got to really find out, I mean, you sure you really love this? But this boxing is a sport. Pretty much, you can also add MMA. It's only two people, man against man. It's a rough sport. I mean, your life, your health is on the line. I can name you a couple of fighters, a couple of fights that I watched. I don't know if you remember Dooku Kim when he fought Boom Boom Mancini.
Did he go
Asian
blind
guy.
or did he pass? He passed away.
He
I didn't
died.
want to say it, but
You
I remember that fight. Yes.
Yeah. So and they just, I think about 5-6 months ago, which is really heartfelt because it was a young lady boxer that died.
I didn't
in
know
the
that.
ring. Yeah, you can look that up.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, boxing is a science, it's a sport, but man, it's dangerous, man. You risking your life and your health.
Yeah.
Many people talk about the greatest of all time, who was my hero in and out the ring, Muhammad Ali, and I always kind of like educate people. They said that he, you know, what Ali had came from boxing. I know some people ain't never been hit a day in their life and had the same thing Ali had. But think about it, with him, you know, taking punches, it made it come faster.
Yeah.
And that's why, you know, Ali's not with us today. But man, anybody, you gotta be loyal to the sport of boxing.
That you're in a fight.
Right.
Then you know. And at that point, is where's your heart? Where's your loyalty? It's not going wild and blacking out. It's just, you're here now.
Right.
And my father said, there's only a couple of things that can really happen in this thing, you know. And that was his way of he was taking me to a tournament. He explained, he said, you nervous? And I was like, yeah. And I'm just explaining, I was like, I'm going to be fighting all weekend. He pulled over and he's like, you scared to get beat up or something? And I was like, I don't want to. He said, yeah, but are you scared? He said, if you're scared, I'll take you back home. He said, but if not, you go on and go fight. I mean, the worst thing that can happen is that, you know, you don't win. But you will be doing what you said you wanted to do, which is commitment to the act.
That's right.
A lot of dedication.
And at that point, I said, man, start up the car. Let's keep going, you know? And that was it. And we did. And I think I maybe won that tournament. I don't remember. I was like 16, 17 years old. But I may have won it because I didn't win all of them. But they were fun. They were fun. Even the last fight, I actually had him sitting ringside. And he asked me, he said, did you have fun? I was like, yeah, I had fun. He said, you'll do it again. And he wanted me to stop. He's like, you're too old to be doing this over and over again. He said, you'll do it again, though, I'm sure, because I can see it in your face. Yeah.
See, my story is a little different because I was so in love with boxing the first day. Mr. Carter told me I could become champion. My first amateur fight at the age of 12, I got disqualified third round for slapping. That's when they had the white at the end of the gloves. You had to turn them open.
Yeah.
And then I went on to lose my next 3 fights. And then when I won the 5th fight, the next time I lost a fight, I think I had like 30, almost 40 amateur fights, and I lost in the JO Nationals.
Okay.
But you know, everybody.
The Junior Olympics for those listening.
Yeah, but a lot of the people, you know, around the boys club and the boxing team, and just they thought something was wrong with me, man. I can, you know, normally when somebody lose, man, they, you know, they crying or they sad or this or that, but you know, I didn't respond that way. But you know, I was doing something that I love to do. And think about it, if they wasn't, even back then, if they wasn't paying the people to box, I would have been doing it because I loved it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. There's a difference between a competitor and a fighter.
Yeah,
you respectfully, Reggie, you are a fighter. You know, the way you fight, how you fought, I mean, you fought smart, but you still, like, you bang, like you fought. You know what I mean? Some people don't. And then you can, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
You'll see, and really in the MMA, I kind of noticed this a little bit more than boxing, because I think the speed of boxing is too fast for me to catch this, because I've studied this other sport for so long. In MMA, because you can slow it down a bit, like if you don't want to get hit no more, you can take them down. You know,
Right.
if you're too far out of the striking range, you
So
can
when
kick.
you land there, you can get you a little rest.
Get you a little rest.
Yeah.
I don't like saying that. Reggie said that, not me. I didn't say that. I only slightly agree.
But you gotta get a rest.
You got to get a rest. You know, now you get to grapple because your arms are swole up. You know, so you can figure it out differently. But what I was saying is that you will find out when you get grinded on. You will find out who was there to fight versus who was there to compete. Some people look at this like, oh, this is a competitive sport. This isn't a fight, guys. This is a competitive sport. It's not the same thing for the person who's getting their teeth knocked out on the receiving end. Like, no, he's fighting for his life. He or she is fighting for their life. And if you take it that way within the confines of the rules, that's the real hierarchy of animal kingdom. You know what I mean? That's where Tyson fought. He didn't compete. Like he literally said, I was scared. He said, I was scared they were going to hurt me, so I wanted to hurt them first. That ain't competing. That's fighting. He just fought within the context of Marcus of Queensberry's rules. And I just respected looking at the differences of those who could really make fighting an art form. And I think I know that you did that. I'm sure you feel the same way. It was just, it was some amazing footage. I started looking back on some of the fights, and it was just amazing footage to watch. Win or lose, it was just, wow. I'm really about to sit down and talk to him about these fights. It's like, so,
but even with Mike Tyson, man, you know, Mike Tyson, physical, man, that dude was 16. Me and him the same age, and man, he was crushing guys. I remember Mike. God, what's the name? Is it Teddy Atlas used to be with him?
yeah, Teddy used to be with him.
Yeah. But I remember, Teddy Atlas used to be out there talking to him. He'd have breakdowns and be crying, and he'd be out there, you know, patting him and, come on, we got to go get ready. He'd go back in there, shadow box him crying, and boom, knock somebody out. Yeah, that was Tyson, man. He was, man, that dude went through a lot though, man. As a kid growing up, you know, where the hood he came from, and it was rough. Yeah, that's what I understood. I went to New York maybe 3 or 4 different times. They would still never take me to Brownsville, never. Oh yeah.
And it was always like, because I'm not from New York. I have family out there on the East Coast, but you know, if I'm out there on tour, I'm doing my own thing for business purposes. And I'm asking people to take me somewhere. I went over to Queens, you know, where Run DMC, you know, started from, you know, Hollis, Queens. And I'm like, man, this is amazing because I feel like I'm walking in history. I'm like, take me over to Brownsville. Like, no, we're not going over there. It's like, not at all. Just say you went. Just we're not going to Brownsville because it's still Brownsville. It's not, it hasn't changed over the course of these decades, which I always think is interesting because it's back to Reggie's point, which is this is where 90% of the fighters come from. The gutter, poverty, disenfranchised.
And we're not just talking about in America. We're talking about all over the world.
Yeah.
They showed Manny Pacquiao. He's a little bitty kid. He's trying to sell some little... Yeah.
With no shoes on.
Yeah. You remember
I feel
that?
like boxers have like the most problems.
What you mean?
Like they come from either broken homes, you know, their family don't want them. They've been beaten by their own parents or their family members. I don't know. I always hear different stories like that.
Those are the stories that you hear when they come from the hood.
Those are stories that you hear. I think
those are the stories that you hear. And like dealing like my sister and them dealing with their kids who have kids. Man, it's a big difference. The way these kids are disrespecting their parents now, man. When I was coming up,
You would be killed. We would die.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
It's a difference. The parents act like the kids act like the parents owe them something.
Well,
You know, I got a thought,
okay.
and I agree with you both. I just the thing I keep talking about my friends about is that I think this is our fault. I keep saying it this way. And what I mean by that
When you
is
say this is our fault, you mean the parents?
the parents generationally. Yeah,
Oh, absolutely. I say that we create the.
we created the
I
problem.
think-
We created this monster.
I think
that's-
we're like the last generation to get belt whoopings. Because if you look at it now, it's
I think
totally
that depends
different.
on what side of town you're on.
But still, like I feel like
You
we're
don't know
like the
about
last.
she didn't say stitching card and
No.
and going out there. My grandmother used
switch.
to make us pick the switch. And if you come back with a small one, she go back.
Yeah,
and
let me
come
go
with
get
the
this.
tree.
Mom
The whole
used
tree.
those leather
Yeah,
belts.
let me pick up today. I'm sure nobody got beat with a whole oak tree but me and Reggie.
That's right.
So
and I'm gonna tell you something else. I used to like my grandmother, my mother's mother. If she on the phone talking, you walking up trying to do something to her, or ask her something. I don't know if you ever said
No, I know,
the
I
whole
know those
pinch.
pitches.
This is a country, but she do that, and then she like twist,
Yeah.
twist.
and
You
your
know
arm
about
fall
that?
off.
Huh?
Yeah, I know
hurt.
about that. Yeah, man. No, my upbringing is from South Park as well as North Side 32nd and a half, right off of
So you
Main and
raised in
Yale.
South Park?
Yeah,
Oh man, did you know every Bigfoot Martin?
that probably was before me. That was probably before me.
He fought George Foreman, all of them. But
No.
that's where he's from. Me and him were like this. As a matter of fact, when I turned pro at 17, I got the people to work with him.
Really?
Everett Martin, yeah. He
Man.
fought George. He probably fought more heavyweight champions than anybody.
Were we talking about the 70s?
No, we're talking about the 80s and 90s. Everett
I
Martin.
don't know this man.
Yeah, he's from South Park. You
Okay.
remember MLK where it used to end and there used to be a circle?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where he lived back there.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
he's right
I'm
here
off,
from Houston, Everett Martin, man.
so I'm off MLK and Overdale. So
Okay.
like you know where Timmy Chan's is, right?
Oh,
You hit, okay, so you
man.
run past Timmy
Did
Chan's
you
all
remember
the way down.
Savannah Boxing Club?
I do remember Savannah Boxing
Yeah, I
Club.
know that's close to Timmy. I used to go there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, it's good times back then.
You remember?
Not good food. Don't go. Stop it.
So you know Ronnie Shields did, who
Yeah, I
was
know of
trained
him.
by Savannah and them,
Yeah.
came up with them.
Yeah, I know of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's where we talk about generationally, right? Because even with Tim, and I hope that he can see this so he can see my face, because the last time I saw him in passing, I may have been in my 20s, but the first time I met him, I was 17.
Tim.
Musil.
Okay.
Because he was over at a fitness expo at George R. Brown.
Okay.
And he had his whole kickboxing system over there.
Okay.
And me and my buddy Dorico Thomas, he's in California right now. Dorico, love you, bro. And we were there because Rico was doing kickboxing, I'm doing taekwondo. I said, well, the fitness expo is here. We ain't got nothing else going on. Let's go. We went in there, and you can see Tim demoing with another person. And he's just going back and forth with him. And his style was, because he's lanky, so like his style was like, wow, this is really interesting. He said, hey, anybody want to come up and, kind of help us out? And we were like, yeah, us. Because again, we just kind of like to kick people. So we go in. I was belted. I think I got my first degree black belt at 16 in Taekwondo. So that doesn't really mean much, but it does mean I know how to kick.
Right,
At the
right.
very minimum, I can kick you. So we go and he does the back demonstrations and the pads, and he's holding the pads, and wow, you kick really fast. Now, this is me trying to work my way over to Colorado Springs. This is around the same era. Oh, you kick really fast, man. Where are you guys from? And then we struck up that conversation from there. This era is the VHS era, though. You're talking about tapes now. Man, I got the tapes from Tim because he was selling his kickboxing tapes on there. Like, hey, here's how you can kickbox. Here's how you can do it, too. Not trying to be funny, Tim, but this is what it was.
Tim was he's a great trainer because he had people from different countries coming here. He was training.
But he was in Thailand.
Yeah,
I just
yeah, I
wasn't in
know.
Thailand in the same era.
Right,
but he
right.
was there.
Yeah.
And I saw that footage, and I'm like, this is exactly what they do to you in Thailand. Like, they're hitting you with the pads, like, because we hold the pads this way.
Right.
And they're hitting you that way, rib side, just so you can toughen up. Usually in boxing, they're going to hit you with a medicine ball to toughen up your core. Those kick pads have a weird, hard core
Yeah,
angle
it
on them, though.
hurts.
I mean, and that's just the things that they would do in Thailand for training, you would get shut down out here for it. Like, it's just not the same. But that's dog camp.
You guys think about this. We haven't won a gold medal since 2004. Andre Ward.
Wow.
I know the young lady did, Clarissa Shields, but
Yeah.
I'm talking about the men boxing.
Men boxing, yeah.
Think about it. Last time we won a gold medal was 2004, bro.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
So
That's
they
a
doing
long
something
time.
right.
no, it's crazy, but let me tell you why it's crazy. I mean, why this is happening. How many trainers who was trained by the old school trainers are training fighters? There's not that many.
Okay.
So all the old school trainers has died off, and there's very few trainers like.
And we were talking about this yesterday.
Yeah,
too.
yeah, like Ronnie Shields, and you know he's with like Eddie Futch and those old school trainers.
Right.
What's the trainer in California? I used to go to the gym. Oh, Eddie Futch.
Eddie Futch.
Not Eddie Futch was the trainer, but Freddie Roach.
Freddie Roach, yeah.
He had
man,
Eddie Futch. So that's not too many. You know.
That's interesting that you say
Yeah.
that. Now, you know, Tarver is a coach now.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I still believe that business is still there. There's a couple of them, but you're right though. Like if you really look at it on average, that's not the hub where everybody goes in to try to learn how to fight. That's crazy. I didn't even think about that.
Former great champions come back and train fighters, and a lot of those old school trainers, man, it's like falls down.
Yeah.
Those guys they train become champions.
So besides you boxing, who else boxed in your family?
Oh, it's a good question. That's going to educate my man here.
I
Let
told me get my eyebrows ready to raise them up.
I told you about my uncle, Kenneth Ironman Walker, who took me to the gym, who we just buried a couple of months ago.
Rest in peace.
But also, when my dad died in 2003, I flew my grandmother, my dad's sister, and then my cousins, her kids here. And we sitting at my table eating, and then my grandmother, who was at that time 91 years old, she started telling me about my grandfather who died when I was almost 2 years old, how he was a fighter, professional boxer, and she didn't want him fighting, but he kept doing it. And then we found out that he was related to D. Jack Johnson, who was the first African-American heavyweight world champion that was from Galveston.
Galveston Giant.
So you know, just, you know, when that stuff just come at you like that, you're like, okay, well, I understand, you know, where my love for boxing came from.
Yeah, you really can't escape it.
Right.
It's in the blood.
Right.
It's in the blood. That's a good question. That was
Very good question.
Yeah, I think I like Jack Johnson more than for history purposes, because like I'm pro Texas, and like this guy, like I can't see his fights, like I can't find them. So now you're reading the stories like they're legendary, like he's a comic book character. You know what I mean?
They have some of his fights out there.
Yeah, they're on YouTube. They are there, slowed down, black and white.
Yeah, but you know, back then when the black man was beating up the white brother,
Gonna say they cut him off early.
No, they turned it the thing off. Yeah,
Yeah, they turned it off.
They was doing that back then. They'll turn it off.
That's all political.
Yeah.
It's all political. That's very true. They would cut the broadcast. Those technical difficulties. The difficulties is he's getting beat up.
But it makes sense though. Think about Jack Johnson, heavyweight champion in the early 1900s, marrying white women.
Yeah, a little different.
He was with the right people. He couldn't have did that if he wasn't with the people. They would have hung him or did something to him.
That Chuck Berry got hung politically as well for roughly the same thing. Mr. Carter.
Yeah.
And we talked about that on the phone. I said, that time politically was just so different because they would make it would always be a black and white issue because that's how they would sell the fight.
Right.
Joe Louis versus Jack Dempsey.
Yeah.
Like, not Jack Dempsey. Who was the man in Germany that he fought?
Oh, yeah, I know you're talking about. That's the guy that he knocked out Joe Louis, and then Joe Louis came back and knocked him out. Yeah,
but it was always U.S. versus Germany because that's a World War II level, thing where we got to beat the Germans. Yeah. And they made this fight that Muhammad Ali, that's black on black, but Muhammad Ali versus Frazier was that Frazier didn't take the same political position that Ali did. Mm-hmm. And so they tried to put them against each other, which was unnecessary. It made for a legendary, newsreel, but just unnecessary. They was gonna fight regardless.
That first fight with Joe Frazier and Ali, they say that's the fight of the the century.
Yeah, might have been fight of
Still-
2 centuries still.
It'd probably be 2 centuries, but they say the century. Man, that fight, man. Hey, what's the actor name? It was so
Will
so.
Smith?
No. That's the one played Ali. No, this the old guy. He's a singer, and man, it was so crowded with all the noted people there. To let him be down there by ringside, they say, "Here, you just got to take this camera. You got to do the photo." He turned.
Sam Cooke.
No. It was
The singer?
No, it was a white guy. He's
Oh.
the actor.
Frank Sinatra.
Frank Sinatra.
Yeah.
He took.
See, man,
he you on it.
Yeah.
He became the photographer to be down there.
Yeah, so crowded.
Man, there was so many people at that fight, bro.
Yeah.
Man, that was
Yeah.
fight of the. You're right. It might be the fight of the 2 centuries, right?
You're just not going to be able to beat something like that in terms of how much buildup it made. Maybe Tyson and Lennox, because there was no pay-per-view back then, I'm going to say maybe second place goes to Tyson and Lennox because they were a part of 2 separate promotions. One's HBO, one's Showtime,
Right.
and they had never merged the 2
Right.
promotions until then. And they made a lot of money.
I know, but if you really think about it, when you say Tyson and Lennox Lewis, I guess maybe because Lennox was from, living London, UK area over there, but they got fights that a lot of. Even the Holyfield Tyson fight was bigger than the Lennox Lewis Tyson fight, I think.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Especially when, especially the second fight, it was even bigger because Tyson bit the man ear.
Took his ear. Yeah.
I was just talking to Holy a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
I said, "Well, Holy man, would you fight Tyson again and let him bite your?" He said, "Yeah, if they pay me another $35 million."
And let's segue into it. Let's segue into the event then. So the 24th, we got a meet and greet at the Way Church. Holyfield, as well as Reggie, Sweet Johnson. Let me say the whole titles. I'm not discrediting nobody. World champions are going to be at the Way Church. Boxing world champions, defending world champion boxers, legends are coming over to the Way Church for the meet and greet. They're also going to do Q&A, memorabilia signing, as well as actually just really describing what God has done for them in their lives. And I think it's an amazing event. Happy that Qualified, as well as Team Lazo, will be a part of this, just to actually document it the right way. And this conversation, albeit was about boxing, we did want to make sure that we give enough credit to the church just to let them know that this is where it's going to be. So y'all go online and type in Way, WAYCHURCH.org. You can see the meet and greet address, the time. It's going to start at 11 o'clock, and the time for that service. So it's going to be a good event. Yes, sir.
And I want to... this whole idea that doing this meet and greet event with Evander, Holyfield, and myself is by the great pastor of that church. It's a church I've been going to for about 2 months. Even Jazz and her mother has been there. And Pastor Matt, the leader of that church, this whole deal was his idea.
Yeah.
And, he needed me to reach out to Holy and reach out to the boxing world, the family, and bring it together. It's going to be a great event, meet and greet, with mics in the audience, mics on stage, videos being showed where you guys will be able to ask questions. And like he just also aforementioned, we're going to be signing pictures. And I know the 8x10 pictures we won't be selling. We're going to just be signing those. And we'll probably have some other memorabilia there, which you could bid on to buy.
Cool.
All right.
That's awesome. You bringing your belts?
Oh, I got 7 belts. I'll probably bring 2 or 3 of them.
Bring out the U-Haul truck.
Yeah. I'll bring 2 or 3 of them.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and close out then. I won't keep y'all. Jasmine, you got anything else you wanted to throw out there?
No, I'm good.
You good? Okay, cool. Well, y'all remember a few things. Number one, this was absolutely amazing for me. I didn't think that we were going to take this road this far down, and I really appreciate that because it provided a lot of insight as about you and your legendary career path. And I don't think this is the end of the conversation. We'll have some more down line.
This is just part 1, man. I think we got about at least 10 episodes.
We doing rematches. We get to do rematches. Y'all remember to follow us on YouTube, all streaming platforms. Like, subscribe, and share. This episode will be out soon. We are doing this ahead of the show at the Way Church. For that, check me out on QLAFD podcast. Also look at Jasmine. Let them know where to find your Instagram, please.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram, Jasmine Lazo, and then on Facebook is Jazzy Jew.
All right.
And me, Reggie Johnson, boxer, Reggie Sweet Johnson on Facebook, Instagram. What's the other one? I'm on most of them. Just
Twitter, yeah.
Twitter, yeah. Reggie Sweet Johnson. And you plan on setting this up and interviewing Holyfield?
Yeah.
Holyfield gonna need about 4 or 5 hours. He's a hell of a talker, bro.
Let's party, man. You and him in the
Great
room.
talker,
That's fine.
man. He's a hell of a talker, man. I love hearing his story.
Yeah.
And man, that guy have so much love from his mom, and just to hear his stories with him
Yeah.
and his mom, man, you're gonna be fascinated by that.
I'd love to do it. I'd love to do it. I guess I'll talk to him over next week. But yeah, we'll set that up.
Okay.
I appreciate y'all's time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.